Tastis today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about giving up hope or the perception, realistic actually, that the globalists are in control everywhere. The entire public square discourse, or 95% of it, is controlled by the globalists and their incessant need to tell the most outrageous lies and to shut down anybody with an alternative opinion or even a question. And it shows I think, not only their lack of confidence, but that they know that what they're trying to sell is utter shit, because you don't tell that many lies if you've got something good to sell. You don't need to shut down questions and alternative opinions if you're confident in your position and that your logic is unassailable and so on. So they're not sure of any of those things, which is why they have to tell so many lies, which is why they have to shut down alternative opinions or questions. So nonetheless, though, small in number though they may be, they control all the mainstream media, they control all the institutions, and they control all the Western governments. They're a long way short of controlling the hearts and minds of the populace, the Western white populace, and they know that, which is why they label all white people as Nazis, and the biggest threat is white supremacists and Hitler. That's just their posturing, the globalist posturing and positioning, because they know they just can't sell it. They can force it on us, and they can use the police and all the law enforcement authority, Department of Justice, to terrorize and threaten and arbitrarily imprison. They can use activist judges to throw us all in prison for not agreeing with or not accepting their lies and so on. But the people get heartily sick of it. To me, every time I look at anything online or the movies, television, cable television, streaming services, anything, it's all chock full of fucking globalist propaganda. There's enough to drive you around a twist, but it's just non-stop. The thing that, of course, that will annoy anybody is the amount of lies, the lies that they're telling. If you look at all the way history is being rewritten, you look at all the great inventions throughout history, and even that's being rewritten. Did you know that Edison and didn't invent this, and everything was invented? It wasn't the real inventor who we celebrate and have celebrated for centuries. They didn't do it. It was actually their black lesbian cleaner that really did the invention. Oh yeah, you didn't know that. And the reason you didn't know it is because fascist Nazis wrote the history. But now we're doing the real history, that none of these white men did any of this. It was all down to their black lesbian housekeeper. She did everything, or the trans housekeeper or something. So that's, they're trying to rewrite history with utter and ridiculous absurdity. In any entertainment program that you see, I saw a movie that was about 1870s France, and and in 1860s, I think it was 1860s France, and the owner of the biggest business in town is black, his wife's white, and he's the one most concerned with goodness and justice, and he morally shows up those evil white people, and then the person who's the smartest person there is Vietnamese, and all these dumb, evil, stupid white people, and then there's the oppressed homosexual who surrounded by Nazis. And now this is a French movie that supposedly depicts the 1860s in rural France. Yeah, sure. But you see this propaganda all over Europe, everything. I saw a Belgian police show recently where, and the police shows particularly are infiltrated with this propaganda, where the all the smartest, brightest people are all black or minorities. All the evil people are straight white males, and all the smartest people are non-white, and everything's in utter reverse to the reality of the world. But that's the fantasies they have to create and inflict upon us. So it's easy in this sort of situation to sort of lose hope and even sort of go into a state of almost despair, because you're being lied to, you're being cheated out of your inheritance, that all these things, that when you go to the medical centre and none of the doctors speak English, that's being inflicted on you, there is nothing natural or organic about your declining standard of living, and the again, going to the medical centres or the hospitals or public services now, just renewing your driver's license. You're lucky to see a single straight white male in the place. They're all minorities, and very very few of them speak competent English. Or if you do get a white person, they're a lesbian or something. So it's very easy to go into a state of despair over all this. If it happened naturally and organically, it wasn't forced upon us, as it clearly is. We weren't being lied to, or for mine at least, I wasn't being lied to all the fucking time. Then I would view it quite differently. If it was a natural, organic process, and we'd voted for it, it was a referendum. Do you want masses of illiterate black and brown peasants pouring into the country? If we'd been through the proper processes to get to this stage, and I'd be okay with it. But of course, it wouldn't have happened. If there had been a vote, then there wouldn't be this mass migration. So they've purposefully sidelined the Western white citizenry and disenfranchised us to get to this point again. So it's easy to despair because we've got nowhere to go to do anything about it. The courts are politicized. Our politicians are all owned by the globalists. The media is owned by the globalist lie, 24/7 telling lies machine. So if we do try and say anything about social media, most of us are deplatformed. Our videos are cancelled or censored. So they've got control now. So again, it's easy to go into a state of despair. But I just want to now sort of talk about when Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, Soviet Russia fell to pieces, sort of in that period of 1990, early 1990s. Now, just a quick history lesson. When in the Second World War, the Soviet, the Red Army troops were heading westward, and they invaded in doing battle with the Nazi armies. They invaded sort of Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Yugoslavia as it was then, Czechoslovakia, and Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So they invaded sort of all that, and where they installed in effect puppet communist governments. And East Germany, or the eastern quarter, if you like, of Germany. So they installed communist governments. Soviet Union or Soviet Russia had been communist since 1917. But when it all fell to pieces, it fell apart quite quickly. And what was obvious is that the people never supported the regime. The communist regimes could only keep control by controlling everything, the complete discourse, all the media, all the public services, all the institutions, all the politicians. Only by completely controlling all of those could they maintain their position. And the people knew they were being lied to. They knew the newspapers were chock full of propaganda and lies and misrepresentations and untruths and all that. They knew that. But everyone pretended that it wasn't. And in order to make sure that the people sort of complied, and there was a very high level of compliance, as sullen and as resentful as that compliance might have been, there was a very high level of compliance because, in places like East Germany, every fourth or fifth person was a fucking spy, spying on you. They had building sort of superintendents and everything. They were all spies, seeing who coming was going, who was visiting you, when you went out, when you came back. So there's all sorts of spying going on. Relatives were encouraged to spy on each other and so on. And this was all across the Soviet bloc. And there's comparison with the communists and the brutality of the communists and the brutality of the Nazis. But the Nazis had in terms of secret police and spies, I think one in every 250 people was a spy, whereas in these communist countries it was 1 in 5, 1 in 10, 1 in 15, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of that. There was a massive spy and oppression apparatus in the communist countries. You weren't allowed to leave the communist country. So it was illegal to leave. You wanted to go to the next village or town, you had to have papers and this sort of thing, a special internal passport and the like. So huge social controls were put on the populace because given the choice, people would not have gone along with that system of social control and government. So when the communist thing fell over, interestingly, they had a quick history lesson here. The Soviet Union had a new, what they call a general secretary. That's like the head dude, and a guy called Mikhail Gorbachev. And he wanted to, he'd spent a lot of time looking around the West and noticed how much more efficient the West was in not only in industry, but in agriculture and transport, distribution, storage, everything. And he wanted to upgrade the Soviet system to be more modern, like the West. And but this would have involved a reduction in party control. So the communist goons and the heavies and the apparatchiks and all that sort of thing, they realised that their position and their privileges would be diluted if a system of efficiency and merit started to come in. You could be meritorious ideologically, you hate the West or this sort of thing, but you couldn't be meritorious from an efficiency or productivity point of view. And this was something that Gorbachev wanted to address. So the elites saw that he would undermine their position, so they sought to remove him, and they fumbled it and made some I think some silly errors, and so whilst his position was effectively neutralized, it created a Russian nationalism that came out of that, which threw off the communist thing, Boris Yeltsin and all that sort of stuff. Not that those guys were any better on Yeltsin and his cronies were fucking useless, but the thing about it was that if Gorbachev wanted to spend 20 odd years, 25 years, slowly moving the Soviet Union across to a more efficient system, and for example, giving more land to the most efficient farmers, because if you wanted to grow things like herbs, parsley or garlic, or things like that, that was pretty much done through, a lot of it anyway, was done through private land holdings. That was not part of the state communist farms. And Gorbachev wanted to, because he saw how productive those guys were, and he wanted to increase, for example, one of a number of things, he wanted to increase the amount of land that those people had, those farmers had, so they could create a more efficient farming sector and gradually build that up. Also, there were the things, in order to make sure everybody had a job in the Soviet Union, they simply slowed everything down. So there'd be, I've heard one person I was talking to said the way they did it, there was one broom but 10 people, or there was one delivery van but 20 delivery drivers, and so everybody was sort of rostered on to only work a few hours or a day or two or something a week in order to make sure everybody had a job. So to do that, the whole system, of course, had to be extremely inefficient, and which is why you go into supermarkets, there'll be nothing on the shelf and that sort of stuff. Unlike Russia today, which is, of course, by comparison at least, quite Western, and you go into a supermarket and you see that the shelves are full of food and groceries and whatnot. So that when the Eastern Bloc fell over, and once the Russian sort of thing fell over, they were the ones that really were forcing Eastern Europe to stay communist. But if there's been choice, the Eastern Europeans wouldn't have stayed with the communist system. So they were being forced to do so. And again, through spy networks and forms of oppression and endless lies and so on being told through the state-controlled media. So when the Soviets fell over, the Europeans couldn't wait to throw off the communist government. Now, they were so terrified that the communists would return in some form that they tried to run at breakneck speed into a capitalist system. And I thought they made a lot of mistakes and fucked a lot of things up. But anyway, they kind of ended up getting there to varying levels of success. The success of the capitalist system in, say, Romania and Bulgaria or Serbia is not so impressive. Whereas in places like Poland or the Czech Republic or Hungary, it's actually worked out well much better than the other places. Anyway, they've probably still got a way to go. But the thing is that when they look at globalization today, those East European countries, or even the Soviet Union, or even Russia for that matter, they see the same sort of social control, imposition from above tactics that the communists used. And they're very suspicious of that because they know how it worked out last time. But once the military power, if you like, of the communists waned, which it did when the Soviet Union fell over, and the Red Army troops had an instruction not to interfere with local affairs, so they just stayed in their camps and didn't do anything throughout Eastern Europe. None of the people wanted the communist system, and they were glad to get rid of it. They didn't believe any of the lies they were told. And I think we're in the same position here in the West that today that no one believes what the globalists. Oh, I mean, there'd be some, but no one believes what the globalists tell, the lies they tell. The lying is so blatant, the rewriting of history and all this sort of stuff. I mean, no one believes that crap. And maybe the young kids do, or even a lot of young kids don't believe it. They think it's cool to go along with it, but they don't believe it. And that was also a situation with the Eastern Bloc, as it was called in Europe, the communists. A lot of people just sort of went along because it was easier. I mean, why push back against it? And then you're going to have the secret police knocking on your door, or your sick mother in the nursing home is going to suddenly find that she's on the street. All sorts of things like that. So, but I don't think anyone believed. It appears anyway that no one believed. And the people that have left Eastern Europe since then, they thought, well, we always knew it was crap. We always knew it was lies. We always knew it was untruth. We weren't under any illusion. But what could we do? If we said anything about it, we could have been arrested for being a counter-revolutionary or enemy of the people or some other vague, made-up bullshit charge. Then we can see things like it happening in the West today. Look at the January 6th episode. I mean, for goodness sakes. So anyway, so take heart in that the majority of the people just simply don't believe it. It can only be imposed through terror, lies, and brutality. Only be imposed. That is the only way that the globalists can push it. And they're going to have to ramp up the terror. I don't know if they can tell any more lies than they currently are. So the only way is to ramp up the terror machine through arbitrary courts, arbitrary arrests, and turn what should have been security services in the West, turn them into secret police against Western citizenry, because we're only fighting Nazis, and it'll be that'll be the next piece that they're already heading towards anyway. But take heart. It seems that they're in control everywhere, and actually they pretty much are. But I don't think anybody, or a very small proportion of the population, actually believe it. You've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.